Hello, 'tis I, the Reviewing the Ultimate Guide guy. Well, this is only the second video, but it's the only thing I have up on here so far. Since we got past all the introductory stuff last time, this one is just cat pages. That also means I can start experimenting with my style, since we already know how I normally draw. Yay! I might sound a bit different here because OBS decided to forget how to record audio. It works when it's muted, then pretends it can't pick anything up when it's not. So I recorded this in Audacity. Audacity's filters seem to be a little nicer to my voice than OBS's, so hopefully that's an improvement for you guys too. I also have an obnoxious cold, but that's completely irrelevant. Boring stuff out of the way, on to the review and redraws. We're going to cover all the pages in one, since the only major difference that jumps out to me is that Goosefeather and Featherwhisker are both covered in the old one. They're on the same page, and designed so similarly that if it weren't for Pexels, I wouldn't know who was who. Obviously, the text is revised to exclude Featherwhisker in the new guide, but the changes aren't too significant otherwise. I like Goosefeather's image in the new guide, though I've always imagined him as long hair. He's described as shaggy in the books, and I always got the impression that he was disheveled. I wish the illustrations reflected that more. Firestar's page is next. A quick skim reveals that none of the text from the old guide has been changed in the new one, but a paragraph at the end emphasizing his role in the afterlife was added. Though I enjoy the old guide's image of him with his mouth open, the new guide's image is a lot more atmospheric. Of the two, I definitely prefer the new one, but the old one will always have a place in my heart. Spottedleaf's description has very few changes, though one I did find amusing is that they changed "the final confrontation with the Dark Forest" into "the Clans' great battle with the Dark Forest." The old one gives the feel that Omen of the Stars was definitely the last arc by describing it as the final confrontation. Silly authors, you'll be writing these books until you die. I like the colors used in the new guide's depiction of Spottedleaf more than I like the colors of the old one, but Spottedleaf hiding in foliage is a lot more visually interesting than her just staring at the viewer. Like I said last video, I'll never stop appreciating the textures. McLaughlin's painted leaves are so pleasing to look at, and Richardson's fur makes me want to reach out and pet the characters. And finally, Graystripe. In the original guide, he and Millie share an entry. Since he's listed by himself in the new one, his summary is changed to reflect this. New information has been added to highlight his role and experiences during the Broken Code and Graystripe's vow. The old guide has both Graystripe and Millie hiding in the foliage. Graystripe is solid gray, which is a little disappointing since he's named after a stripe. But when only his face is visible, it's a bit difficult to show off patterns anyway. The new guide reuses the art from Graystripe's vow. Though I do like the posing, since it gives him a bit more personality, it made me realize how little variety I've seen from both artists so far. Most of the cats are generic short hairs without any interesting features beyond their markings, and some of them don't even have that. Real-life cats can have great variance in appearance, even between random bred cats. One of my cats is over twice the size of the other. I can fit the smaller one's head in my hand, while the other has a muzzle that makes him look like a panther. One of my cats' fur is curly and dense like an alpaca's, while the other's fur is soft and straight despite being just as long. My brother's cat has a tiny head, short, thin limbs, and a long, round body. We called her Sausage Baby because she literally looked like a sausage. But this is Warriors. It's a fiction series about cats fighting wars in the wild with magic and religion. We don't need to be realistic. Why not take influence from existing cat breeds? Make Graystripe a British Longhair, or Firestar a Chowsy, or Goosefeather a Carillion Bobtail. There's a lot of variety out there even when you're drawing in a realistic style. I just really wish the character of these cats came through a bit more in the illustrations. When I went to draw Goosefeather, I wanted to play with a more detailed and messy style. I used scribbles wherever possible and made sure my brushes were soft. The soft messiness of it was meant to broadcast Goosefeather's franticness, as if the drawing were made quickly and without force, jotted down and then quickly passed over. I knew that if I used the rough pencil brush, the color would bleed past the lines, but that would only add to the messy feeling. Goosefeather hisses at the viewer, narrowed eyes accented by fluffy brows and unkempt, frazzled whiskers. The background was, to be fully honest, a last-minute thought. I placed him in long grass because it would be easiest to match with his scribbliness. His frame was meant to resemble a Polaroid, though it's not completely there. I made it bent and offset on purpose to match with the messy nature of everything else in the image. I drew these in 2 sittings and out of order, so it's funny to me that they somehow got split by ones in my style and ones that aren't. The next one up is Firestar, who I drew in a style heavily influenced by SSS Warrior Cats. SSS Warrior Cats, along with a couple other Warriors fan series, were part of what inspired me to make illustrated videos. They made me realize I could animate by myself. Though I tend to stick with PMVs and storyboards now, I can never ignore their influence on me. I started off by looking at SSS's design for Firestar and deciding what I'd viewed as essential to recognizing him. SSS actually had a lot more variety in eye types than I remembered, so I considered changing Firestar's eyes to something more like Tiger Star's, but decided to just go with a smaller, more narrow version of his actual eye shape. Although this design is based on the one in SSS, he's a fierce leader here, not a fresh apprentice. Smaller eyes tend to make a character read as more mature, and ones that slant downward toward the nose tend to be read as serious or determined. I had a lot of trouble finding examples of fire. The object, not the character. In SSS. The only example I thought of off the top of my head was Spottedleaf's vision, but checking there only gave me a completely lineless image, which didn't prove that they'd render fire as lineless. I decided to go for it anyways, since I'll take any excuse not to draw line art. I did fire in the background using an airbrush because the backgrounds in SSS always seem less sharp than the characters, though that could just be due to the compression and lack of lines. But it created a very clear focus on Firestar in the foreground fire, so if it's inaccurate to the style, I have no regrets. I'm not actually a fan of Spottedleaf. I don't dislike her, but I don't care about her. Spotted fire isn't really my thing, and that's most of what I remember about her. Regardless of my personal feelings, I tried to do her justice. Still, I somehow came out with the least Spottedleaf looking Spottedleaf to ever Spottedleaf. I wanted to make her pink, and it all went downhill from there. Though, I don't think it's bad, I just don't think someone will look at it and go, Spottedleaf! My mind drifted to Tim Burton and unsettling, unnatural things, and before I knew it, I had a dramatically lit Spottedleaf staring up at the stars. Imagining her as a patchwork plushie makes my design choices a bit more sensical. That's when I realized what I truly associate with Spottedleaf, the Tears to Shed map hosted by Princess Anna. With that in mind, I actually really like where I went. It's dark and moody, and Spottedleaf stands out from the background without conflicting with it. Of the 4 cats featured here, Graystripe was the one I had the clearest idea for. I always viewed him as a confident cat, so I wanted to show that off. He winks at the viewer, his paws and belly on full display. He's just staring you to pet it. I gave him bushy eyebrows as a reference to his manga design. The white on his chest and belly is meant to divide his head from his body and also adds more intrigue to his darker areas like his striped brows and nose. I turned his tail back toward himself in the hopes that the viewer would look at the image in a hook shape, starting off near his eyes, traveling down his belly, and then being redirected back to his face by the tail and white belly fur. I made his frame horizontal with rough edges to simulate torn paper. The finished image just gave a scrapbook feel to me, and I can't really explain why. And that's all. Thanks for watching. Next time we'll tackle Sandstorm, Brightheart and Cloudtail, Yellowfang, and Cinderpelt. Perhaps it won't take me multiple months, or perhaps I'll procrastinate the days away yet again. I like the cult... dies. The only example I thought off the top of my head... Fucking hell. That also means I can start experimenting with my style, since we already know I normally draw. I sure hope we know I draw.